Man, I can't wait to make this video, bro. I've been dying to make a video about the Bible. Oh, it just says Bible right here. Oh, it does say it on the front. You can barely see it. This is a really old Bible. Look at that. But you ain't got a Bible this old. What year is this Bible published? I don't know. It don't say. It's older than you. That's all I know. It's older than me. This is really an old Bible. But today, I'm going to do a lesson on James and John, the sons of thunder. Now, you can read in the book of Mark 3 and 17. Let's get her really quick. The book of Mark 3, chapter 3, verse 17. And what does it say? And James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, and he is surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder. But it does not tell you why they are called the sons of thunder right here, which is pretty weird. I thought Mark was the earliest gospel. How come it doesn't explain it? You got to get to Luke. Let's see what Luke says. We're going to find out why they're called the sons of thunder. Luke 9 and 50 something. Luke 9 and 50 something. Where should I go? I'll start at 51. And it came to pass, when the time was come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. And talk about Jesus. Well, yeah. And he sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. So the Samaritans rejected him. And when the disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did? But Jesus turned and rebuked them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are. For the Son of Man is not to come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. So, that's why they're called the sons of thunder. James and John were called the sons of thunder because they famously asked Jesus to rain fire from heaven. So why would he call them the sons of thunder? Because, let me read another scripture for you guys real quick. Let me get the book of Ephesians. Who wrote the book of Ephesians? There's a lot of people who think Marcion wrote Ephesians. Isn't that something? That's crazy. That's wild and crazy, ain't it? That's wild and crazy. Ephesians 2 and 2. Wherein time past you walked according to the course of this world. According to the course of this world. So, the God of this world, according to Christians, is bad. Correct? That's what the Christians said. The God of this world is bad. He's no good. Right? Wherein times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So the prince of the power of the air, that is the God of this world. Because it just said it right there. That's the course of this world, is the course of the prince of the power of the air. Now, who is the prince of the power of the air? It shouldn't be too hard to figure out. Zeus, bro. It's Zeus. It's Jupiter. He has a bunch of names. He's known as Baal. He's a storm god, the ancient primitive storm god that everybody used to worship. Everybody had their own name for him. Jupiter, Zeus, Baal. The Israelites called him Yahweh. Okay, that was their storm god. So James and John were called the sons of thunder because they thought you could call on the storm god to rain fire from heaven. That's ridiculous. Like Jesus is not, he was not with that. Because if you know the story in the Old Testament, Elijah got into a battle. He got into a versus match. There's a versus match between Elijah and one of the priests of Baal. And Elijah challenged the priest of Baal to make fire rain down from heaven on a sacrifice. I'm not going through the whole story, but we know what happened. Elijah called on Yahweh. Yahweh rained fire from heaven, consumed Elijah's sacrifice. And Elijah won the contest. You guys know the story. I'm not explaining it all. So that's a big, long story. And then Elijah killed and murdered all the priests of Baal. Okay. But anyway, James and John wanted Jesus to emulate Elijah. They wanted him to do the same thing that Elijah did because Elijah's a man of God, right? Is Elijah a man of God? I constantly hear Christians, praying that God rains fire on their enemies and pray that God kills their enemies. That's not the spirit of Jesus, guys. Let's go back to the book of Luke. Luke 9, and let's carefully read what Jesus said. Let's carefully read it. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did? So, should we rain fire on these fools, on these Samaritans, just like Elijah rained fire on the priest of Baal? We should do that, right? This is what Jesus said. But he turned and rebuked them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are. He said, you don't know what spirit you are. They had a different spirit. And that spirit was the spirit of the prince of the power of the air. That's why they're called the sons of thunder. They actually thought Yahweh was real, I guess. You could call fire from heaven. Nah, bro. So Jesus told them, you don't know what spirit of you are. Because the spirit that was in Elijah was an evil spirit. We're all taught and we're all trained to believe that Elijah was a man of God. No, he had a bunch of people murdered because they had different religious beliefs. Hello, use your brain. You can't be crazy people murdering somebody because they worship a different God. When actually Baal is very similar to Yahweh. They're both a storm god. Many people speculate that the Baal in the Old Testament is just a different version of Yahweh. It was an opposing priesthood of Yahweh, but with a different priesthood. Because the Israelites in the north viewed God differently than the ones in the south. All right. I'm going to read this again. So James and John asked Jesus, should we rain fire from heaven on these fools? But he turned and rebuked them and said, ye know not what manner of spirit you are. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. So how come Elijah? So Elijah was not in the spirit of Jesus. He was not. That's not the same spirit. He followed a different Lord and a different spirit. That's not the same spirit that was in Jesus. The spirit that was in Elijah was the spirit of the devil. I hate to say it like that, guys. I got to say it like that. But the spirit of Yahweh, that's the prince of the power of the air, the storm god. Look, guys, the God of the Old Testament is no different than Baal or Zeus, okay? The ancient Israelite religion is barely any different from the ancient Phoenician religion, guys. It's a pagan religion, okay? It's just facts. It's something we're just going to have to deal with. And you're just going to have to understand that's not Jesus' father. Jesus' father is the real God. But Jesus did use the Old Testament. There's good stuff in the Old Testament. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's still good stuff in there. There's still the traditions. A lot of good stuff. A lot of really bad, evil stuff in there too. But you can highlight the good stuff and focus on that. I mean, just like with the Iliad and the Odyssey. I mean, I highlight the good stuff in that all the time. All right, but I don't worship freaking Zeus, bro. Okay, I don't worship freaking Yahweh. But if I want, I can read. Well, I don't really like the Old Testament that much, I'm not going to lie. I like the book of Ecclesiastes, but Yahweh's not even in the book of Ecclesiastes, so whatever. I guess there's some good proverbs. There are some good proverbs. I'm not the biggest fan of the Torah. I don't like it. I don't like none of the prophets. I don't like it. It's not interesting. It's not an enjoyable read. It doesn't even read smooth. There's a few banger lines here and there in Isaiah. I give you that. Isaiah got a couple bangers, a couple good lines here and there. But for the most part, I don't like the prophets. I think they're dumb. And that's my personal opinion. I don't like them. They're boring. They don't speak to me. But Jesus speaks to me. That Old Testament stuff don't speak to me like Jesus speaks to me. Because Jesus taught a totally different message. That's why Jesus said this that's what he said. He said, for the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. But Yahweh wants to destroy everybody's lives. Judaism teaches you to destroy people's lives. Somebody breaks the law, kill him. Curse those to curse thee. That's what the Old Testament teaches. Look what Psalms 139 verse 22 says, to hate your enemies with a perfect hatred. That's not the spirit of Jesus. I know what Jesus taught. Jesus said to love your enemies, guys. In the Old Testament, Psalms 1, what did I say? Psalms 139 verse 22. It says, I hate my enemies with a perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Jesus said to love your enemies, you guys. So you got to be able to know the difference between opposites. You guys got to be able to know the difference between a square and a triangle. You got to know the difference between odd numbers and even numbers. You got to know the difference between a straight line and a crooked line. It's like basic stuff you guys won't have to pick up on, and you're not going to get very far. Okay, you have to be able to tell opposites apart. So when James and John wanted to rain fire on heaven, fire on their enemies, Jesus said, no, you do not know what spirit you are. So I have every right to say Elijah was in the wrong for what he did, because Jesus did not approve of that. He said it right here. But he returned and rebuked them and said, ye know not what manner of spirit you are. You don't know what spirit you got. That's an evil spirit. The Son of Man has not come to destroy men's lives, but Elijah came to destroy men's lives. How many prophets of Baal did Elijah murder on that day? I bet I could look it up. 1 Kings 18. Let me see if I can find it. I ain't reading that whole story. That thing's so long. I read it one day. It took all day. 1 Kings 18 and 38. Yeah, that's a big long story. I ain't reading all that. Am I in the right chapter? And I'm not used to this Bible. I don't know how many. I don't feel like looking for it, to be honest with you. It's going to take forever. He killed a whole bunch of the priests of Baal. Okay, he killed a lot of them. Oh, I'm in the wrong daggone book. I was in 2 Kings on accident. So I ain't going to look it up. We ain't got time for all that. So Elijah killed a whole bunch of the priests of Baal. He just slaughtered them. He murdered them. But Jesus said, what did Jesus say? For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. How? But that's different from Yahweh. You know, Yahweh, he's the destroyer. Alashajah. Exodus 15 and 3 says Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. You gonna tell me Jesus is a man of war? The Prince of Peace is a man of war. Like, what are we doing here? That's literally opposite. Okay, this is goofy. Yeah. I don't want to say nothing bad about anybody. Like, people might say something bad about me. Like, whatever. Like, I don't want to say I'm on a higher level. But a lot of you religious people, you just ain't got it all together. Okay, a lot of you guys, you're uneducated. You learn a couple scriptures. You think you're a professor now. You're not. All right, I'm old. I've been reading for years and years. I know what's going on. You don't. All right. 1 Kings 18:38. I'm going to find out how many men he murdered. Then Elijah unto people, I only remind the prophet of Baal. 400. Elijah murdered 450 men? Is that right? I know he murdered a bunch. That's a murderer. But anyway, so why do you think the book of John says he was a murderer from the beginning? The thief cometh not but to steal, kill, and destroy. Who still kills and destroys all through the Old Testament? It's not Satan. Okay, it's not Satan. Who destroys the most in the Old Testament? Who causes the most destruction? Who? Okay, who's the great destroyer? Apollyon. Apollyon means to destroy. Who causes the most destruction in the Bible? Who says they will destroy you over and over again? Whose favorite word is destroy? Who's the God of war? It's Yahweh, the evil God of the Jews. And if you worship the evil God of the Jews, that just makes you a Jew pretty much. Pretty much. Okay? A good tree cannot bear bad fruit. So the Old Testament was a good tree. It would bear good fruit. It bore the state of Israel. That's what that bore. That's what that bared. Bared. What's the proper past tense of that one? It did conceive some very bad fruit. So Apollyon, the destroyer. Did you know one of Yahweh's nicknames is El Shaddai? Even the Hebrew Israelites teach this. They taught me this. The El Shaddai or Allah Shaddai, El Shaddai, it means a terrible demon-like power. It literally means a demon because Yahweh's a demon. Now, some people say there's a good Yahweh. Maybe there is. They'll say the northern kingdom worship the good Yahweh, and the southern kingdom worship the bad Yahweh. That's what some people say. So there's people got a lot of different weird, wacky beliefs, but there's a lot to it. People get confused. I just don't worship any primitive gods at all. That made it real easy. I'm not worshiping gods from an old Phoenician pantheon. All right. I follow Jesus. Jesus taught us about the real God, the Heavenly Father. Jesus taught us that God is light and God is love. Murdering people like the priest of Baal. I'm sorry, guys. You are not supposed to murder the priest of Baal. You're not supposed to murder anybody. Okay? That's not the spirit of that's evil. It's like people, their moral compass is broken. If they read a story in the Old Testament, and if David says to hate your enemies, it's cool because David said it. But Jesus said to love our enemies. So who am I going to follow, David or Jesus? That's an easy choice. I'm following Jesus. The heck with this David guy. He teaches the opposite of Jesus. I'm not listening to him. He loved Jonathan more than a woman. That's what a lot of you Christians, you always taking up for David. And here it is, David tells people to hate his enemies. He was gay. Yeah, I used to take up for David. I'm like, David wasn't gay, bro. But it literally does say that. It says he loved Jonathan more than a woman. Maybe they were best friends. I don't know. This dude was a freak. He killed a man for his wife, so he had to be bisexual, so he couldn't just be gay. So David... And once David did collect 200 foreskins off of dead Philistine penises. Is that your religion, guys? We're collecting foreskins now. What do you got, a foreskin pouch? Where do you keep 200 foreskins? It's like, how much room does a foreskin take up? Do you need more than one pouch? Could you fit them all in one pouch? Like, how long does it take to peel off one foreskin off a dead Philistine penis? Well, I don't know the answers. You're going to have to ask King David because he has plenty of experience. 200 Philistine foreskins stripped from dead Philistine penises. That's what King David did. He was only commanded to get 100. He got 200. He got the double of. So he got really good at it. He was really enjoying himself. He just couldn't stop it at 100, I guess. If you guys have ever stripped a foreskin off of a dead Philistine penis, maybe you don't know that feeling. Okay, that feeling of excitement like that David had of stripping those foreskins off of dead Philistine penises. But that's what King David, that's the legacy he left behind. And there is no proof that you can prove that Jesus is a direct descendant of King David. They mythologized the text. Jesus is a real person. David probably never even lived. Moses is mythological. Yahweh is a myth. Jesus is real, a real historical person. Most of the characters, there's some real people in the Old Testament. Cyrus is a real person. But the farther you go back, the more mythological it gets. Like Abraham, that's a myth. They made that up. All right, you guys don't get it though, bro. You guys live in fantasy land. That's okay. Fantasy land is a fun place to be. I'm not going to lie. That's like going to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, going to fantasy land. So I ain't hating on you. That's a fun place to be, boy. Fantasy land. It's a good place to be. But yeah, but the name of my video was James and John, the Sons of Thunder. So the reason they're called the Sons of Thunder, because they wanted Jesus to rain fire down from heaven like Yahweh did in the Old Testament. But Jesus ain't teaching Yahweh. That's the big secret. No man can serve two masters. You can't serve God and mammon. Yahweh's the God of mammon. He rewards you with riches, material wealth, the land of milk and honey. Yahweh says his kingdom is of this earth. It's the land of milk and honey. That's what he rewards you with. Slaves, gold, silver, material wealth. Abraham was rewarded with material riches. Job was rewarded with material riches. Jesus said, lay not up your treasures on earth. We know the deal. Everybody knows what Jesus said. He was non-materialistic. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, but Yahweh's kingdom is of this world. So I know what's going on. I would really hope that other people would learn what was going on. That would be very helpful. There's nothing I can do about it. I can make a video here and there, try to tell people, and they're not going to listen. Okay? The world is replete retards, so there's not really much you can do about that. Okay? Not really much you can do about it. You can try to teach people. I don't know if that's helping or hurting more, to be quite honest with you. Because people just, they want to worship old, ancient Phoenician gods. But yeah, so David was gay. Moses, Abraham didn't exist. Jesus existed, though. I'm about to stop. I got to go home, bro. I wanted to make that video real quick. So James and John were called the sons of thunder because their father is Zeus. And they didn't realize Jesus didn't worship Zeus. A lot of the disciples were retards. They didn't know nothing. Especially Peter. He was extra dumb. Mary Magdalene was the smartest one. That was like a common theme. You guys didn't catch it, though. About how dumb the disciples are. You guys didn't know about that one. Disciples are retards. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Not all of them. Thomas is pretty cool. Okay? He asked for proof. What a good student. I've been proud of Thomas. All right. And I had some other thoughts. I had something else I was going to say. So James and John, they were called the sons of thunder because they wanted to rain fire down from heaven like Yahweh. Or I'm like, the sons of thunder. Who else rains fire from heaven, bro? Zeus, Yahweh, a storm god, an ancient primitive storm god like Zeus, Baal. Okay? Yahweh's no different from Baal. There's even child sacrifice in the Old Testament. Jephthah sacrificed his daughter to Yahweh. So you can't deny there's child sacrifice. Abraham sacrificed his own son. Oh. So I'm not a Jew. I don't worship fake Jew gods. And I don't follow the fake Jew book. Now, like I said, there's good stuff in the Old Testament. I don't want to disrespect anybody's religious beliefs. I really don't. That's not really my goal. But it's really hard not to when you like, I got to say Yahweh's a devil. That's like hard to say. Because it sounds so offensive. Sounds so disrespectful. But it just is, bro. It's like so facts. Like he said to smash babies. I ain't smashing babies. Fucking crazy. Like if anybody who teaches that's a psychopath. But that's what the Old Testament teaches. Hey, the Jews today, they listen to it. They follow Yahweh. The Christians don't. The Christians are the worst Yahweh worshipers ever. Okay? Because you don't listen to none. Yahweh said smash babies. Yeah, you ain't smash no babies. Jews are doing all the baby smashing. So y'all Christians, you say you worship Yahweh. In word only, not in deed. See you smash narrow baby. Y'all be out there feeding the babies. The little heathen babies. Y'all out there feeding them. Taking care of them. That's what the Christians are doing. Now the Jews are smashing them because they follow Yahweh better than the Christians. They smash the babies. They enslave people. So Jews are way better Yahweh worshipers than Christians ever will be. I forgot what I was looking up. Oh yeah, I know. Genesis 12:3, guys. God tempts no man. The devil is the tempter. Can we all agree that the devil is the tempter? Who is the tempter? Right now, tell me, who is the tempter? Does God tempt people? Yes or no? No. No, no, only the devil tempts. Well, Yahweh tempted Abraham, says it right here. Genesis 22. I can't get these daggone pages apart. Genesis 22, I really gotta go. Genesis 22:1. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham. Well, it says God, it says Elohim. But, it's still talking about Yahweh, I'm pretty sure. It says Lord right there. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, he said, behold, here I am. He said, now take thy son, thy only son, whom thou lovest, and sacrifice him, put him on an altar. So he didn't say that, but it does say that. So he listens. If some being comes out of nowhere and tells me to sacrifice my son, I'm going to tell him to go fuck himself. That's what I'm gonna say. Go fuck, get behind me, Satan. I ain't sacrificing my son. Fuck, first of all, that's illegal. You're gonna go to jail. It's immoral. You have to murder your son for your imaginary friend. Are you crazy? But it says God tempted Abraham. God don't tempt nobody. The real God in the New Testament does not tempt nobody. The God that Jesus taught us about is not a God of temptation, a God of tempting. It's not a God of evil. It's not a God that would ever talk to anybody, first of all, because God never talked to nobody, dorks. So that's how you know they made it right here. Because if you ever see God come down and talk to somebody, the only time that happened was when Jesus came down. Look, the God did tempt, unless you want to say we're gods, and that's a different thing. But you know what I'm saying? That God did tempt Abraham. So God tempted Abraham. Well, this is Yahweh, the old Hebrew God, the old Jew God, the evil Jew God tempted Abraham. He's a tempter. I didn't write that. That's the King James Bible. Oh, I can only use the King James. Well, that's what your King James says. So there you go. Yahweh is a tempter. You can't get around it. The God of the Jews, whoever you want to say that was, that's the tempter. Jesus told it. What did Jesus tell the Jews? Ye are of your father, the devil. Like literally, who's their father? Is Yahweh. Who's their Kyrios? Who's the who's the Lord of the Jews, guys? Hello. Ye are of your father, the devil. Is Yahweh. Why would the New Testament go out of its way to say God tempts no man? Why does the New Testament even mention that in the book of James? Why does it say God tempts no man? Because the teaching in Judaism is that Yahweh tempts people. It was like, oh, Yahweh tempted him just like he tempted Abraham. That was a common belief among Hellenistic, Greco-Roman religions, Judaism, and everything. You know, God tempts people. That's what Judaism believed. That's what Romans and Greeks believe. But they're dumb because God doesn't do nothing. God ain't coming down and talking to people. If somebody told you they was talking to God, you know they made that shit up. Unless they was talking to themselves. Because the real God is a spirit. God is a spirit, you big dummies. God is a spirit. Where's God at? I'm going to ask you right now, where's God? You all be pointing, all looking around. Well, I don't know. Where is he? He's in the Biru. He's in the sky. He's in his heavenly abode. He's sitting on his throne. Okay. Fucking retards, bro. God is inside of you, you big dummy. That spirit inside of you. Where did that come from? Next time somebody asks you where God's at, you point right here, because that's where he lives. The New Testament says, God dwelleth with us. Ye are the temple. That's not what the Old Testament teaches. The Old Testament teaches Yahweh's an actual being, and you got to feed him. You got to leave out sacrifices for him. You got to bake cakes for him. You have to build a temple. He needs a house. What kind of God is that? You got to build a house for him in the Old Testament. You got to feed him, build him a house. That's the primitive primate caveman religion. The Old Testament was man's old primitive caveman ways of thinking about God. Facts, facts, facts. None of it's real. Stop saying it's real. It's not fucking real.